It's just great to see all of you today. And as I told Zach a second ago, I'm going to go through the format just so everybody remembers. And what the format is we allow Zach to speak uninterrupted for as long as he wishes 30, 40 minutes, 15 minutes, hopefully more than 10. We'll see.
Sure.
If it gets over 40, I'll give you that. Anyway, and then after he's had a chance to speak, we'll just take 1 minute of silence and just let all of his words settle in. And then we have a chance for questions. And as you remember, we're on YouTube. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone. And that way, both question and answer are recorded. So once again, thank you very much for coming out. And without further ado, Zach Sudbury.
Thank you. In thinking about how to share what I believe, I wanted to start sort of with a timeline because that that's been really important to me. I've had different phases of belief, that some of which are still very much with me, some of which I'm still trying to shed, but some of which I'm glad are still here, right? And then others that are brand new. So um, I I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons. My parents were both Mormons their whole lives. It's a generational thing. I had ancestors that went back to the pioneers who, stopped off here in Kansas City, right, and then continued along. Um, and I grew up mostly in Utah as well. From fifth grade onward, I was in Utah. So heavily surrounded by that culture, growing up in it, and from in that Utah time, not a lot of exposure to other things as well. My parents were very strict, and so, um, but I I grew up really believing a lot of it. I know a lot of people's interaction with their uh, original, the faith that they're raised in can be a lot of different things. But for me, one of the things that that the Mormons like to do is to encourage you to ask God yourself, right? Um, Pray, and ask yourself and see what God tells you, and trust that, right? Mm. Now, that is heavily surrounded with what the answer is supposed to be, right? That is heavily, guided as in terms of like, here's what everybody in our community, what their journey has all looked like. It's usually fairly monolithic. Um, but I grew up doing that and believing that the good feelings that I felt sometimes while I was at church or singing the songs or whatever were an answer there. So I grew up very much believing um, what that church teaches. Um, I When I was 19, I served a mission for the church. As
Mm.
people may be aware. So yeah, I knocked doors. I went to Germany, learned German, and knocked doors for 2 years. And while I was there, had had my first faith crisis, my first crisis of
Mm.
faith. So I was there for probably about a year, out of two, when I started looking around and realizing like, okay, I thought this was going to be a certain thing. I didn't come with the goal, as many young Mormon men and women do, of I want to convert as many people as possible. I want to, I'm going to count my baptisms and that's going to be my wins, right? I didn't come with that approach, but I did expect to like feel like a messenger of God. I did expect to feel like, the spirit with me, right? Warm fuzzies, some feeling from above saying like, you're doing my work and this is good. And I realized it just kind of felt normal, but I was just knocking doors all day. And that didn't feel good. It felt like a waste of time. So I started really delving in internally of like, why is this? What could this be? Is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Let me read the scriptures, read the Bible, read the Book of Mormon, pray a lot, ask people. And so I sort of doubled down and tripled down and then was eventually like, nope, I'm not, I'm not getting anything. Um, and, and I feel abandoned and I feel um, lost because it was different than what I'd expected. Nobody could explain it to me in a satisfactory way that matched my experience. And so I'd been there 18 months now. I had 6 months to go, and I went into the boss and I said, um, the mission president, and I said, I'd like to go home. I'm done. Like, are you depressed?
Mm.
Like, yeah, you could put it that way. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's more than that. And he cut me off. He's like, listen, we'll get somebody to talk to you, put you on some meds, you'll be fine.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I guess I can try that. It's only 6 months. Put me in a really beautiful area, put me in an area down by Neuschwanstein's castle.
Mm.
So I was like hiking in the Alps and like, whatever. I guess I'll just do this. And I went home with that feeling of like, that was not satisfying. My sense of God being there, he wasn't there as I've been taught, as I had believed. So what now? And in my, as I look back, my regrets for my life, I have very few, but that's one. I wish I had taken that chance to listen to that, to process it, to face it, to move through that and figure out what was next. Instead, I just kind of went back to, I got a job, went to school, and I was living with my family, so I would go to church and just sort of not engage that much, and um, and then I got married, and then and it wasn't until um, like 13 years later that I'm going to church most of that time. I participated in the church. I taught and whatever. Um, when I had my second crisis of faith, which was really just the end of that first one. And I realized, like, oh no, I can't do this. This is not where I am. Um, by that time, I was in Lawrence going to school. Um, and and it kind of all fell apart at once. Um, yeah, I found I couldn't go and teach. I was a graduate student. I couldn't do my teaching assistantship. Um, I had no words for it in my marriage. I couldn't, nowhere that I turned was working. And so I actually ended up in a psychiatric hospital for 10 days. And when I got out, my wife said, don't come back home until you figured yourself out. And so then, and so then in that time, I left my graduate program, I left my marriage, and I left the church all at once.
Mm.
But while I was there in that psychiatric hospital, I ended up writing this letter to God, and it was the most purifying like realization. Like, here's what I believed all this time. And basically, what I came to was if if there is a person, a God, then either he doesn't want to talk to me, then I don't want to talk to him, right? Or there's some special way I'm supposed to be interacting with this being, and I don't know what that is because I've tried. And so, well, if I don't have any access that way, then that's not my fault either. So I'm fine. Or there's nothing, or it looks completely different than I have any concept of. And so that's where I've left it for a long time. When I ended up coming back to the first church I visited after that event was the UU church in Lawrence. And I cried through the whole thing.
Oh.
Um, the messages were amazing. It was a friend of mine who was speaking, and he was brilliant. And I was like, oh, this feels true. This is like actual good, helpful things. But just being in a church again was so
Mm,
difficult, that I just cried through the whole thing and
mm,
hurried out at the end. When I first started coming here, it was to see Shanna sing, and I had some of the same experiences. I would sit there and I'd just sink down in my seat and just be bawling. Um, and and it was through, but again, I was recognizing myself in what was being said. And so I think it was through humming and listening, going through some of that again, that I was able to even conceive of myself as a spiritual being again, of having any sort of access to spirituality. Because I had um, sort of said, I guess I don't know what I'm doing there. I guess I'm just not going to do anything, so I'll just cut it off. Um, yeah, and then gradually, slowly, I started to open myself up more and more. But in getting ready for this, I realized like, oh, I've still got more to do. I still, in terms of here's what I believe, right? Or sitting down and thinking through I still have some trepidation there. So I am grateful for this chance to do this much
mhm.
and to try to open myself up one more time in a safe space and with people um, who I trust to handle that with some care. Um, I thought after the story, um, thought I started thinking too about two things. Just what do I believe? Um, and and then what of those original beliefs is still with me in a positive way or in a way that I'm still trying to shed.
Mm,
So I thought I'd go through some of those. Um, as as s- as sort of constrained as I felt the Mormon way of look for yourself, seek for yourself. As constrained as I felt that was, it was still a strong message that was repeated over and over and over and over again, and that I took face value. And ultimately, that was part of what led me away from that. Was yeah, I've literally done everything. I've looked at it. I've searched. My mom, especially, was a very literal interpreter of of the scripture, um, in a way that often led her to be in disagreement with the other members of the church around her. She's a very strong-willed person and believed in that and taught that. Um, her dad as well, um, who grew up Catholic but converted to the church and then left it later.
mm,
A lot of the mythology I heard from him was that similar stuff of like really look at it, um, search, see how it matches, and come to your own sense of the truth. So as as complicated as that was in that earlier iteration, I do really strongly believe in that now. And as I'm trying to open myself up again, that's a really important part. Is does this match not just what I believe? Does this match my experience of the world? Does this match my how I feel? Does this match, um, you know, bouncing it off some of my um, core texts, some of my and in conversation with other people. Um, I I believe that that search is both logical, um, has concrete, visible, tangible outcomes, right, that you can look for. But I think that's emotional as well, and I think there is a sense of opening myself up to things that I don't know, that I can't see, um, and that generally over time I feel to be true, and I'll act on it that way. Um, one of the when was thinking what I learned from growing up Mormon, one of the things that I have tried to shed and that I'm still working to shed is a sense of judgment.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
in that tradition, as in a lot, I think of of religious traditions, but Christian, Western Christian especially, um, there's a sense of being able to look out and judge, and there's a black, right, and wrong. That's very clear, right and wrong, black and white. Um, and and I know I took that with me. I took that with me in terms of judging myself, also in terms of judging others. Um, and when I look back at things that I'm ashamed that I did or how I treated other people, um, moving away from that as best as I could, slowly, slowly, has brought me closer to the person I want to be. But I still sense that in myself sometimes. Um, one of the big things that's changed in my spiritual journey is realizing where my spirituality comes from. Um, as I looked around for like, okay, well, I believe those things. Why did I believe them? Because I felt a certain way, because I felt inspired, because I felt light and alive. Like, where have I felt those things? Actually, where I felt those things the most is in art,
mhm,
in my interaction with art. Um, in theater, especially. I'm an actor, um, and studied theater for years. But also paintings, novels, music. And so I, yeah, that's a big part of where I feel my spirituality comes from, is engaging with those and seeing them and really opening myself to that full experience. I think that's one of the reasons why I would like to be doing more art myself, right? Creating it, because I think that would open up that side of me as well. Um, um, one more thing that I think I took from that upbringing that I have kept with me is a sense of duty. I think um, I think that's a tricky one.
mhm,
You can have a sense of duty for a lot of things that'll move counter to your other beliefs. So it's really important to stay true to what you actually believe. Make sure you're accepting duty in a way that's in line with yourself. But I find that that connects me to people in terms of some sort of agreement or contract, or I think of it mostly in terms of my kids, of like, yeah, I chose to bring you into this world, and I have a sense of duty to you. Also, I love you and I want to be with you, and I have my own relationship with you, but there's a baseline. I will always show up in the best way I can for you. That's part duty. that um, you know, I made that agreement. That's how I understand my agreement I made in bringing them into the world of like, yes, let's have a kid, let's do this, and that when that child is there, that I will be a support to them. So again, that's a tricky one, but one that I do hold on to on purpose. Yeah. One of the things that I love that I um, was looking for in a spiritual practice, um, and that I love about this this congregation and this tradition and what I see in the sermon, what I hear in the sermons and see in played out here is a commitment to the world beyond one's family or one's immediate community, right? That social justice, that belief that the world can be a better place if we act, if we, especially if we come together. And um, I saw uh, in growing up, and I look around and I see a lot of people sort of separating those things apart, right? Um, and I love that impulse here um, to to integrate those that the community is more than just the couple hundred people that we see through the weeks here, or just our neighborhoods. That um, and I love that the pursuit of that sort of encapsulates everything that that I love and where I find my truth. Right. Um, the pursuit of a better world has always included artists pushing forward what is possible. It includes a spiritual aspect, a spiritual, um, prophetic sort of vision of something better. People speaking to it doesn't have to be like this; it can be better. There's a dream of something else. There's a world that can be that isn't now, and it um, incorporates people intellectually looking at and analyzing situations and societies and past revolutions and movements to say, hey, you know, here's some holes in what was happening before. We need to move in this direction. Actually, we were doing this. That's not so good. Let's do this instead. And so much of the progress as I've learned about it um, has been a combination of those things. It's been intellectual, it's been spiritual, it's been artistic, and it's been community. And so that's some of what I see here, and some of what I hope to keep practicing and improve on and further um, my spirituality, my humanity, and my connection to my community.
Thank you. So let's just take a minute and be silent. Okay, and Brian's already got his hand up. So while George passes the collection basket, um, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll take you in the order that I see you.
Hi, Zach.
Hey, Brian.
Um, two-part question, but one part, and if the answer is no, have you seen the Book of Mormon?
The musical?
Yes.
I've not seen it, but I've listened to the musical soundtrack like hundreds of times.
Okay. So
So I know it fairly well.
the satire of it is okay. And I miss you in choir. Come back to choir. I miss you there.
I'm hoping to do that in the fall.
Good.
Yeah. One of the things we're gonna try again, these kids.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say one thing about the musical that I love is I mean, they nail it. They nail so much of the that 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 a certain type of belief requires you to shut down parts of yourself, right? That a certain type of belief requires you to just turn it off, right? If that part doesn't feel good, then just don't feel that way, right? And it also captures this is something I probably only ever told Shanna. But I'm gonna tell all of you now today too. You know the first part, Elder Price, where he sings about being, God's gift to Africa or to the world, and um, so if those of you who don't know, one of the things that differentiates the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from others is that they believe in a modern prophet, meaning that there is a man, um, today who has direct access to God the Father, um, who receives revelation just as those before did. That's why we have the Book of Mormon. It's because the first prophet of this era, Joseph Smith, saw God, the story goes, and Jesus Christ, and then was given these things to translate. And so then here's some more scripture, right? So even today there are 12 apostles, there's a prophet. I grew up believing so strongly in the whole thing, and believing in my duty to be a force for good in in the world, and that would go through the church. That the best way to do that would be to spread God's will and to have more people know the truth, right? That I would wonder at times, like, might I someday be called to be an apostle, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that I, wanted to live worthy to that. I wanted to follow all the dictates of the church and and be in line and be really, really earnest with it all, so that if that was God's will for me, that I would be ready. I think that trains somebody in a certain way to see truth coming and see this much, right? Shut out the other things and to just look here, and that judgment thing and that perfection thing of um, it really cultivates that really strongly to have that. And then I want to acknowledge as well that that in that tradition it's just for men, right? Women can't hold the priesthood. Women can't hold leadership roles in the same way that men do, and so it's very gendered. Um, yeah. Anyway,
I wonder if you'd share, Zach, how meeting Shanna and her experiences with the church have influenced your own, and how the two of you have sort of found your way through that to not only help each other with the growth, but to decide how you're going to approach religion with your own children.
yeah. It. I mean, it was really wonderful to find someone who had that same experience. Um, there are things that happen or things that I'll say, and I can just go, "Whoa, that was some old religion coming back." And she's like, "Yep, yep, it was." Or that we can see she can understand my family in a way that you can really only if you understand that. Um, but and I really admire Jana in um she saw the truth and faced it all much sooner. And so she's lived her whole adult life um working out what she believes. Um, yeah, I think I think it gives us a good foil to work against of like a lot of this not, but some of it, yes, some of the um so we can have those conversations in a shorthand way. Um, yeah, and then I think we both now I think we share, not to speak for her, but I think we share um a similar sense of the divine. Um, I, and I think that influences how we share spiritual practice with our kids. Um, and I think, yeah, I think the biggest thing is us having worked through it all in so many different ways. Um, Definitely gives us that desire with our kids to show them all of the possible paths and to show them critical thinking and to show them you find this on your own. Um, and I think in the story time for all ages, I think Jude has raised his hand and shared some things that were like, okay, that's you. You've just heard of the story of the parting of the Red Sea, and you believe it today. Great. And then, oh, maybe not, right? That we can let him have all of that and give the space. My daughter, I have two kids through my first marriage. Um, Blythe is a very spiritual being, and so as she's searched, or we've heard from her mom how she's searching, it's definitely been interesting too to try to share there, like, great, search, read, like, keep looking, know these other things too, but always without the tricky part, I think, is how do you help them steer clear of dangerous directions without saying, don't do that, right? How to protect that belief that we have of self-determination, of autonomy and of right. So yeah.
Thank you, Zach. That was a very powerful journey. I'm always curious. People who have, you have a family, you have a job, you've got kids, you're pulled a million different directions, but obviously something keeps bringing you back. So, what is there about All Souls that feeds your soul?
It's multiple things. Um, one of the one of the sermons that made me realize I was in the right place and like it was more than just coming to see Shanna perform and have some nice thoughts every once in a while. That I would maybe want to be dedicating some time here was Kendall's sermon where she shared the term, um, is it an apatheist? Does anybody remember this one? So there's theists who believe in a God, and there's atheists who believe there's no God. There's agnostic who don't know, and then there's apatheists who don't care, right? And she did a whole beautiful sermon where she's like, "It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. I'm human, and I'm having this human experience, and I'm given this sense of the divine. And I'm given this brain and this sense of logic, and given the consciousness, and she pulled it in all these amazing ways. But then she's like, ultimately, it does not matter to me if there's a being there. It is not going to change how I live my life. I would rather orient my life to these things that I know and that I have around me. And I was like, so she gave me language for that, and she gave me a common experience too. Um, I'm I'm amazed at how I'm challenged here too to connect things that I hadn't considered connected. Um, to to I find comfort in folks having had similar journeys, in folks um, believing some of the same things, having some of the same core truths, but not being bound to any sort of rigidity in that. Um, and and yeah, and I'm challenged to combine. I think one of the biggest challenges that I see, um, and that I need, especially at this life when I am pulled in a thousand directions, is compassion with myself and with others, and also a pull and a need and an urgency to act in the world, to be a positive force in the world, and to change the world. Right? I find with the limited time, am so at war with myself in that, and find myself wanting all the time in that, and so I need the compassion, but I don't ever want it to just be this nice blanket I curl under and feel okay because I'm busy. So I'm challenged as well. So yeah,
No, Ginger, Ginger.
sure. Yeah.
How did you two meet?
I mean, it's wild. It's wild. I mean, we actually went to the University of Utah in the theater department at the same time. We did not know each other, is the thing. I know it's not a huge department, but we missed each other, but we were there at the same time. Um, and then she moved to New York, and I moved to Penn State, where I got my master's in acting. And then um, I had my first kid there, and so then I'm like, well, I don't know if I can move to New York and make it as an actor when I already have a kid. So maybe I'll teach instead. So that's why we came to KMU. KU, I was in the PhD program there. Um, I learned, I mean, I took some amazing critical race theory and feminism and gender studies classes. It was hugely mind expanding and opening and really wonderful in a million ways. That's how I got to KU. And then as all of that was falling apart, um, Shanna was in a musical production at KU. And so I went to see it. I already had plans to move to Kansas City in the fall. And so I saw her in Next to Normal. I know. She was amazing. So I sent her a message, but she never saw it because she didn't know me from Adam. But then I started working at a restaurant in Kansas City, and I had an acting gig lined up, and she walked into the restaurant, and I said, "You don't know me, but I thought you were really great in that show, and here's my phone number, and I just moved here, and I'm gonna be an actor too, and if you want to hang out sometime." And so and we're both Mormon, and we both have that. I mean, so it's such a foundational it is. I know there's a lot of faith upbringings that um, maybe there's more crossover with others, but it's been so important, and that we were both like believers, and but we were both in this new place, and so we could talk about all that. It's really great. Our first date, we that was a huge part of our conversation. Is what was your relationship with Mormonism? What did you do? How did you leave? We use that too. Recovering Mormon. Yeah, we. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Zach, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
You mentioned that both you and Shanna shared a sense of the divine. Would you talk a little more about what that means to you?
Yeah.
Help me see a picture of that.
Yeah. My sense of the
Yeah,
divine,
I'm going to do.
my sense of the divine does not, it's always easier. At this stage of my life, it's so much easier to talk in terms of negation, carving away, which I don't love, but that's where I'm at right now. So my sense of the divine does not include any sort of conscious being, any individuated or even collective conscious being. My sense of the divine is that that it appears that we human beings have this thing in us that connect us to something that's beyond us. I feel that a lot when I read great literature, when I see um, a, a, a beautiful movie or a play or even a piece of art. There's something in it that unlocks something in me that makes me realize that it's more than me, and it's even more than the people I know. It's even more than the people I sense. Beyond that, it's more even than the animals and the plants and the living things on this earth. I mean, just that would be enough, right? It's definitely that, but it feels bigger, it feels transcendent. There are moments when I have um, either been engaged in a intense conversation with someone about either about some part of the human experience where there feels like a transcendence where the two of us lift up and it's more somehow, or when I'm engaged in that art or when I'm performing, when it's more. And um, I love that word transcendence. I my sense of it is that it's always there, that potential for connection in that way and connection beyond what I know. Um, yeah, so I think that's my sense of the divine.
So I was struggling coming up with a question rather than um, statements or
Sure.
similarities and connections.
Mhm.
My question I finally came up with dovetails on that question. So, what is spirituality for you now? Because you referenced it, multiple times that you've got that. If divinity is not a um, omnipotent being scenario, so what is that for you now? Um, and what you were looking for in your children expand on.
Yeah, I mean, I think dovetailing off what I was saying in response to that, I think it's connection in a transcendent way. I think you can, I think I've experienced it alone, but if it's always in connection with somebody's words that I'm reading or even just thinking about maybe meditating on on what else there is. So I think it's I think it's a few things. I think it's a worldview. I think it is beliefs and worldview that make possible a connection that's bigger. I and I think that's one of the things that I want more of is, I mean, I think we had a, was it last week or just 2 weeks ago, where the sermon was about spiritual practices. So all of different examples of thing to do to make time and space and the opportunity for that thing, right? What I'm calling a spiritual experience or a connection to the divine within us. Um, that's one thing I would like more of. I think it comes through creative practice, through the arts. I think it comes through um, interaction with people that is real, genuine, and about something important. It doesn't mean something grand, but just something real. Um, I think it's I think it's in activism. And that would be a common pursuit that we're engaged in together, trying to do something that's important. Um, so I think spirituality is the practice and the worldview that allows it, and then the practice, the doing of it, um, that connects us. Something like that.
Hi, Zach.
Hi.
Um, I can kind of identify with your leaving, your the church of your uh, upbringing, and then you're kind of kerplunked out here, and it's like, okay, you don't believe this, so find your way. And it's, how do I find my way? So I'm kind of, if that's how you're feeling, I identify. But Shanna gave you a tribute at just a short while back, and uh, she acknowledged your non-toxic masculinity. Um, and in a world where we're just suffocating from toxic masculinity, I wondered if, how that hit you and if you see that as, a way that you can kind of define yourself or open or contribute, to the larger. I don't know if you've ever thought about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's one of the greatest compliments she could have paid me. Um, and yeah, I was very touched. Um, one of the things, two things I want to say. One of them is that I think having having had such a centralized thing, the church that I grew up in and the way I grew up in it, it was everything in one, right? It was a worldview, it was a belief system, it was actions to take in terms of that. It was the answers were already there. It was um, there was a whole path that went on beyond even it went before we were born and after we're dead, and it's like it's all you're on there, and so it was totalizing. Um, and I think when I left that and I was kerplunked out in the middle of everything, I was looking for a new thing that would be. That's one of the reasons I ended up leaving my grad program, is because I think I was trying to make teaching and my career, I was viewing that as maybe that would be my new thing, right? That could make sense of the world and be the thing that was like all together. And if I do that well, then I can, fulfill some sort of purpose in the world, and it can be the right thing. And then I saw the flaws in the academic system, and I was like, well, that's not it either. It's not perfect. It's all lies. And so what I'm trying to do now is not find a new thing that's totalizing. I'm trying to find um, a path. I'm trying to find a journey. I'm trying to find myself along a perpetual journey that I do these practices and I connect with people that and actions and things, and that bring me a sense of beauty and truth and goodness and the divine. Um, the I untangling myself from my 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 original beliefs, my has been tricky, because I think part of my part of my non-toxic masculinity, such as it is, comes from my naive and and just taking it at face value. I read the words of Jesus in the Bible, and 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 said, well, here's a man who puts himself last, right? He's always serving. He raises up those around him. He doesn't ask for anything other than just what's true, and it's just like, and um he and the um and I looked around at women in my life, and I I saw, even then, that there is a lot of violence and a lot of harm and a lot of oppression and a lot of that men perpetuate in the world. I didn't want any part of that. That didn't match what felt good. And so even then, when I thought I would be leading in some way, I didn't want to lead like I wanted to lead in a way that lifted others up and that made everyone feel good. And so I think I was practicing that already, but it was constrained by a hierarchical, patriarchal model. So there's a lot of dissonance in trying to make that make sense. So coming out of that, I think, has freed me. Trying to leave the judgment behind has freed me. Um, yeah, I mean, I, I mean, I, I'm very aware of how I present in the world. I, I'm, um, in acting class. One of my acting professors, um, that's fine. Anyway, I'm blonde. I'm blue-eyed. I'm a man. I'm cisgendered. Um, was Christian for a long time. I was straight. Like there's a lot of ways that I embody the oppression in the world, right? And there were a lot of ways that I was encouraged to be to to play that role and to perpetuate that, and there's a lot of ways that it is still baked inside of me, and so I think it is a process. But I think the most important part is to realize that it's a process, but to still keep trying, right? Um, yeah.
Okay, wait, Ginger. Wait, Ginger. Thank you. I get a chance to ask my question. I apologize, but yeah, that's how we do it. We take turns. So we've had some very interesting Mormon Odysseys. And I want to say, I'm going to give you my question, but then I'm going to give you a couple of examples.
Mhm.
Okay. So the question is, like what happened in Germany at that 18-month mark where you just, I realized, I mean, you said you weren't feeling the spirit was telling you it was the right thing and all that. And I totally get that. But I just wondered if there was like a turning point. An example a woman gave a few years back when she started to reject her Mormon upbringing was when she was told as a teenager to dress modestly, because if she didn't dress modestly, she would entice boys to have impure thoughts. So it was up to her to not let the boys have impure thoughts, which is mind boggling when you, right. And another Mormon person said it was the anti-gay, anti-transgender, all that, which was, absolute, at least in his experience.
Yeah.
That was just, couldn't swallow it. So was there anything like that?
Um, I mean, for me, it was different than those. I thank you. That's good. I saw a lot of human flaws. When I was in it and I believed in it, I saw a lot of human flaws in the church. Um, and most people thought you weren't really supposed to talk about them, and it wasn't really important. I thought it was important, but ultimately that we were all just people, and that that I did wonder why God would let his church go so wrong for so long, especially if there was a direct source to him leading the whole thing. So I wondered about that, and I saw that women, I saw what they're referencing, and so it's like, well, that's not a way to teach modesty. That's not a way to put the pressure on, only one person's. If you believe in sin, there's only one person responsible for any sin, and that's the person doing it. Um, I saw the anti-LGBTQ and the racism in the history and in the current teachings, and um, didn't see a way out of that, but kept coming back to that. But I believe this is true. Maybe that'll be overturned sometime too. Maybe that'll be further revelation, and I don't know. I didn't have an answer to those things. And I, tried to do no harm myself and tried to be conscious of the way I was saying things so I wouldn't play into those what I saw as harmful teachings. What what broke me from it was that I I realized I that the way I had been taught is that you as a Mormon, you follow the commandments, you obey God, and then he will give you his spirit, right? So it was as simple as that. I didn't see that happening. Um, I I look back now and I say, well, yeah, I was acting in ways that weren't in they weren't in line with the things that I believe the most, which is that we should be helping each other, that 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 there is truth everywhere, and that we as humans are all trying for that truth, and that if you're making people's lives better, like that's what I wanted to be doing. And I thought, well, but if I'm supposed to be doing it this way, if I'm then I need the other side of the equation. So it was like being in a relationship where I was giving, 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 and getting nothing back. And finally, I was like, well, I don't want to be in this relationship. It doesn't feel good. And and so yeah, it was as simple as that. As I was promised that the relationship would look one way, and it didn't feel that way.
I want to make a compliment for you because I've been sitting in the choir for several years watching you take care of your wonderful children and how great you are with them.
Thank you.
I just want everybody to know that.
Oh, Ginger, thank you. I do love those children.
And if anybody's a free spirit, anyway.
They're so wild.
No, no. I mean, it's
I know
wonderful.
it is. It is. That's part of being human too.
I think maybe, according to my watch, we've got 2 minutes. So, John, quickly.
You talked about judgment in
Yeah.
the church. I wondered where that leaves you with your family and your parents.
Mm. We don't talk about it anymore. For a while we would, um, and I would, I had a lot of goods and stuff tied up in finally I had a talk with them and I said, "Hey, I want a relationship with you, but every time I talk to you, I'm a wreck for a week or two, and I don't want to do that anymore. So don't tell me how to spend my money. Don't tell me how to parent my kids. Don't tell me what my spirituality should be. If you have questions, you can ask questions." And so there were a few times that I would be on the phone and I'd say, "Nope, we're not doing that." I'd just hang up. And gradually we've developed something since then. We've even had conversations about it since then, about spirituality. And um, so they, I don't, yeah, I don't know exactly where they're at with it. I mean, there's three of us. So I have three younger sisters, so there's four kids, and three of us have left the church. Uh-huh. hmm So, like I said, they raised independent thinkers.
Yeah. Whether they meant to or not.
I know, I know, and I think my mom takes some comfort in that. Mm, you know,
RLD is
yeah.
similar. Well, thank you so much, Zach. This has been outstanding.